find out what the corner office wants to hear from the Oval Office today. Joining us now and again throughout the day is our special CEO panel. We have Mr. Mike Jackson, Chairman and CEO of AutoNation, Ron Kruszewski, Chairman and CEO of investment bank Stifel, Nicholas. Stifel's not a problem, Ron. It's that last name of yours. I just figure you used to coach at Duke. I try to say the same name, and if someone wants to argue, they don't know either. And finally, Farouk Kathwari. He's Chairman and CEO of Ethan Allen Interiors. We'll start, just go across the table here. Mike, what do you want to hear?
Well, Joe, good morning. I'd love to hear, I'm hopeful but not necessarily confident, that the president's going to acknowledge that this economic recovery is very weak, that we've had a great recession, depression in two industries, housing and automotive, and that he's going to pivot and make the recovery of the U.S. economy the most important thing on his agenda, exclusive to anything else. And that means having to take, for his agenda, unpopular steps. Like it's unthinkable in this economy to raise taxes on anyone, so push out all the tax increases. We can't handle any more regulation. We've got years of regulation to digest from the last 2 years of legislation, and then seriously talk about how to deal with the structural deficits 2 to 3 years from now. So it would be a major pivot for Obama to move the economy and jobs exclusively to #1 on his agenda, and I'd love to hear that today. I'm hopeful, but not necessarily optimistic.
I mean, Robert Gibbs and the president himself would say you just set up such a straw man, Mike, to imply that that wasn't his top priority all along. Though, you know that's what you'd hear. You'd hear the same gobbledygook that you hear all along.
I think, Joe, here's the important point. The American people, and why the president needs to be concerned, the American people have come to the conclusion that what the administration is pushing is a bunch of gobbledygook, and that the economy is not #1 on their priority, and they're going to have great difficulties in these midterm elections because they haven't made the economy #1, and I think the evidence is irrefutable. Spend 18 months on health care, and you can debate whether health care is important to this country to reform or not. But to do it in the midst of economic great recession is lunacy, and clearly you're not saying the economy is #1 on your priority.
All right. Hey, Ron, what are you expecting? You're not Goldman Sachs, obviously. You're Stifel, but are you a Wall Street fat cat? I mean, you still got some welts from what you guys have been through over the past year or so? You're going to say, thank you, sir, may I have another?
Well, I don't think we're fat cats, but let's talk about what, there's two things, Joe, what I think we're going to hear and what I'd like to hear. And I'm going to quote Ronald Reagan. What we're going to hear are the most terrifying words in the English language, which is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I think we need to step back for a moment and recognize that the government's not going to solve our problems. What I'd like to hear is less rhetoric, less bashing of business, and then, frankly, a plan which reduces the cost of capital for entrepreneurs, an extension of the tax credits. I mean, look at the news over the weekend. We're talking about today, you have to face the shareholders. If I had to face my shareholders with a stimulus plan that spent, $111 million in L.A. to create 55 jobs, that just underscores that the government cannot be centrally distributing stimulus. We need to put it in the hands of entrepreneurs. That's what I want to hear. I don't think that's what I'm going to hear.
Yeah, that's a big step for someone who is running the government to say that you aren't the answer. The private sectors are the answer. That would be a. I mean, when do you expect to actually hear that, if ever?
Well, if we keep going down the path we are, I expect to hear that when you have some regime change. I mean, that's how Reagan got elected. 1980 was a tough year coming off of a tough decade, and we reduced regulation, we reduced taxes, and we embraced business. And I think that that's what we need to do today. It says, the Constitution says, we the people, not we the government. And if we put stimulus in the hands of the people, we'll get through this, we'll create jobs. If we think the government is going to do that, I have news for you. Not going to happen.
All right. Farouk, do you echo similar sentiments, or you have a totally different viewpoint about what you expect to hear and what you'd like to hear?
Well, I think that we've got to keep things in perspective. You know, we are an 80-year-old company. We are vertically integrated from manufacturing to retail. And what happened last year in the first 6 months was unprecedented. Our sales dropped about 35% in 6 months period, unheard of. Now, that reflected this great recession is not just something that happened last year. This is something that is taking place over many, many years. It's a reflection of the consequences of globalization. It's a reflection of the consequences of the fact that American entrepreneurs have not been running their businesses. They have been completely outsourcing everything. We have been spending a lot of our efforts and time on short-term objectives. So I think that while we need some Band-Aids, that alone is not going to do it. I think we've got to hear about the fact of how we're going to restructure America. At Ethan Allen, we had to restructure. We had to downsize by almost close to 30% of our associates last year. Now, fortunately, we've added back about 15% this year, but we're still down 17 or 18%. And that's where the country is. While we have added people, our sales are up 18% in the first 6 months of this year, but still down 18 or 20%. We are hiring people, but we are hiring them very carefully. We are hiring them selectively. So my question is, how is America going to become competitive? How are we going to create the right kind of a structure in America? And I would just say that look at Germany. It's a Western Europe, high wages, yet they have one of the highest exports in the world. So it's an issue not just for the president. I think our business leaders and everybody else has to take a role and not just say that something that Washington is going to do or not do is going to make a difference.
These sound like long-term issues you want to tackle. For near-term, what do we do when you're staring at 10% unemployment?
Well, there are no real short answers, unfortunately. We are adding people, and we're going to add them slowly. And that's how people have got to accept that. Because the issue really is not just adding people. The issue is when we add people, at the end of the day, are we going to be competitive? So those are the issues that we're faced with. Now, what I would suggest is that the tax policy, the fiscal policy should help to increase entrepreneurship in the United States, should help to create small and medium-sized businesses. I think I'm hearing that from my other associates. That, I think, is very, very important. But I think blaming everything on the president, in my opinion, is wrong.
So, Mike, I'm trying to figure out, are you saying no more programs or yes, find some programs that work? It almost sounds like you're saying, you know, things that the economy will go if you guys just get out of the way.
Get out of the way. That's exactly what I'm saying, Joe. We can't handle cap and trade right now. You have to put the economy first. And let's face it, America created a $15 trillion economy, the envy of the world, with 350 million. The driving factors in that were aspiration, innovation, and entrepreneurship. That's going to be the salvation of this country once again. But you got to get government out of the way at this point and let those attributes of the American people revive this economy. But if you keep putting more and more regulation, if you're going to increase taxes on entrepreneurialism, if you're going to discourage innovation, then I'm not optimistic about what's going to happen with this economy, because those are the attributes: aspiration, innovation, entrepreneurship that made America great and the envy of the world.
Ron, I can't see you, but that almost sounded like what you said. What do you want to just say? Me too, or?
Absolutely. I'll just say me too. And,
yeah.
you know, I'll tell you, Joe, one other thing, though. Kids come to me out of college and ask for where should I work? And they'll say, give me the fastest growing industry that's paying the highest jobs. And it pains me to say that that's the U.S. government. And that's the problem. I'm not saying government's the problem. I'm saying that government getting too big. I heard a guest say 26% of GDP is being consumed by the government. We just need to step back and reduce the role and reduce the nanny state. That's the feeling that I'm getting. Let's just reduce it. We're not eliminating government, obviously, but let the entrepreneurs work.
Well, maybe we'll hear that today, Ron.
You want to bet?
No. All right, gentlemen, you'll be around commenting all day long. We appreciate your insight this morning.